Alright. I'm not an idiot. I know what a lot of you are thinking, so we'll just address the elephant in the room. Washed? That's not the sort of language that you typically use, Alfie. You're usually so erudite and eloquent in your prose, like a modern-day Tolstoy, whose skills being used to make YouTube videos about football is a bit like if Mozart had composed ringtones for mobile phones. Look, I'll level with you. According to YouTube analytics, only 2% of my audience are under the age of 18, and only about 30% are under the age of 25. I'll be 30 in less than 18 months, the age at which, to anyone under 30, you are considered terrifyingly old. To an 18-year-old, you might as well be dead. Clearly then, if I'm going to secure myself a sustainable long-term financial future on this platform, and let's face it, the retirement age will be about 95 by the time that I get there, I need to lock in that Gen Z audience before it's too late, and if that means making some very slight moderations to my language, which most of you probably won't even notice, then so be it. Anyway, yo, what up fam? It's your boy Alfie, cooking yet again, and about to serve up another absolute banger about some of the most dusty ballers that Mandem has ever caught in 4K. Based. Did I understand the assignment?
Right, stop that! Silly!
Silly. Right, get on with it!
The phrase washed up, used to mean no longer effective, actually dates all the way back to 1923, which means that entire opening segment effectively made no sense, and is therefore, definitionally, washed up. In a football context, when a player is described as being washed, it tends to mean that, whatever their former glories or talents, their legs have gone, they are way past their best, and, as with the original definition, they're no longer effective. If you immediately thought of Casemiro there, that is on your conscience, not mine, just so that we're clear. Casemiro has been accused of being washed more times than Lady Macbeth's hands following her complicity in the death of King Duncan. Yeah, those are the kinds of highbrow references that you like on this channel, aren't they? With Jamie Carragher, most notably, encouraging Casemiro to, quote, leave the football before the football leaves you. Casemiro is only actually 32 years old, and he was only 31 when Carragher first claimed that his legs had gone.
And his legs are gone.
Legs have gone.
Did you just say Harry Kane's legs have gone?
Yeah.
Where are they? He's 29, isn't he?
Yeah.
His legs haven't gone, Del.
I just think they've run out of legs.
That's fine, but his legs haven't gone.
I think they're running out of legs, I really do.
You'd have dragged him off in 70 minutes because his legs have gone.
I think his legs have gone.
Where are they? Can we just agree? Can we agree that his legs haven't gone?
Okay, his legs haven't gone, but he hasn't got the pace. He hasn't got the pace.
But exposed in the Manchester United midfield, without genuine runners to either side of him, Casemiro's physical decline has been ruthlessly exposed. If you think that's bad, Eden Hazard was only 28 when he joined Real Madrid, becoming potentially the third most expensive footballer of all time, but almost immediately looking as finished as Prince Andrew's status as an ambassador for several children's charities. Elsewhere, Mika Richards may have burst onto the scene at Manchester City.
I burst onto the scene, didn't I?
But he fizzled out like a sad helium balloon 3 weeks after a party that someone forgot to throw out at Aston Villa, alongside Joleon Lescott, who didn't look so much as though the football had left him as any zest for life itself, with only the thought of his new Mercedes-Benz to keep him going, and Gabriel Agbonlahor, who by that stage had gone from being one of the fastest players in the Premier League to looking like a lost orphan who had been injected with 20 kilograms of marshmallows.
And we looked at Gabriel Agbonlahor, who's a centre-forward, and I had to check, I thought, that's not right, that. There's 8 touches in the first half. It's the lowest touches of any player this season in the Premier League, and 2 of them are kickoffs.
Frank Lampard, Steven Gerrard and Andrea Pirlo were all world-class midfielders in their prime, but by the time that they arrived in the United States for one last big payday, they would have been outrun in a 3-person relay race by Roy Hodgson, Steve Evans, and the tortured remains of Benito Mussolini following 70 years of burning in eternal hellfire. No, probably not really.
So let's not take the piss here.
I certainly wasn't.
Well, I think you are, but there you are.
They were very slow and underwhelming, as was another former midfield great, Bastian Schweinsteiger at Chicago Fire, who was pushed into centre-back as a result. Come to think of it, About half of all MLS designated players could feature in this 7, along with something like 87% of all foreigners who've ever gone to play in the A-League. More recently, Saudi Arabia has become a popular resting place for footballers whose powers are waning or have long since departed them, whether that be Fabinho, Alex Telles, or Edouard Mendy. No, I'm not mentioning him. I don't care what you saw with your own eyes at the Euros. Yes, I know. I was at that game in Gelsenkirchen against Georgia. No, I hear you. US police have sought more arrest warrants for him, and he has created more YouTube channels that he scored goals at that Euros, but I'm not including him. It's not worth it. His fans are mental, and, like I told you all, I've got a long-term financial future I'm trying to secure here. There are loads more players that I could mention that probably wouldn't get me killed, but it feels as though this introduction is already long enough to upset some people in the comments. Video starts at 7:13. No, it doesn't, mate. 7th place starts at 7:13. The video, as always, definitionally, starts at 0.00, so they'll just have to wait until the end. Without further ado then, who was sadly washed earlier than some children are by their own parents, here are 7 of the most formerly fire turned absolutely washed ballers of all time. 7th, Leonardo Bonucci. I much prefer making positive videos than negative ones, because it's never nice talking disparagingly about players, and in this context, time catches up with everyone, so there's no great shame in pushing it a bit too long and looking a shadow of your former self. In Leonardo Bonucci's case, however, when his teammate Moise Kean was racially abused by Cagliari supporters, Bonucci said the blame was, quote, 50-50 on the fans and Kean, so, that dude, you don't have to feel bad about mocking him for being washed up. At his best, Bonucci was one of the best centre-backs on the planet, especially formidable in a back three at Juventus, and at times for Italy, alongside Andrea Barzagli and Giorgio Chiellini. Bonucci racked up 502 appearances for Juve, in 2 stints either side of a single season at AC Milan, which puts him 6th in the club's all-time appearance charts. An 8-time Serie A title winner and 2-time losing Champions League finalist, Bonucci made the Serie A Team of the Year 4 times, the FIFPro World 11 twice, and he won the Man of the Match award in the Euro 2020 final, where Italy beat England on penalties. Never the quickest, Bonucci was a former midfielder turned centre-back who read the game superbly and whose ability on the ball and playmaking abilities contrasted sharply with his old comrade Giorgio Chiellini, who was always a much more aggressive front foot, kick-it and head-it style centre-back who left most of the distribution to Bonucci. On that basis, you might have thought that Bonucci could still compete at the highest level, deep into his 30s. You would be wrong. At 35, Bonucci's last season at Juventus was a car crash. Appointed as club captain following Chiellini's departure, Bonucci was reportedly the 2nd highest earner at the club, but his performances certainly didn't reflect that fact. A shadow of his former self, Bonucci not only moved with all of the speed and elegance of that massive container ship that got stuck in the Suez Canal, even his passing range and accuracy, reading of the game, and leadership skills were nowhere to be seen. In Juventus' joint worst season since the 1950s, excluding the Calciopoli scandal, no one played worse than Bonucci. Bonucci had already announced that he would retire at Juventus when his contract expired in 2024, but he was so abysmal that season, sporting director Cristiano Giuntoli told him that he wouldn't be part of the club's plans, actually leaving Bonucci out of their registered squad for the upcoming season, and telling him that, if he wanted to continue playing football, he would have to try and find a new club. Union Berlin were the unlucky suitors. Bonucci announced, for a second time, that he would retire at Union at the end of the season, when his contract expired, while filing a lawsuit against Juventus for the way in which they had frozen him out. Yet again, Bonucci wouldn't see out his contract. In an Union Berlin team that fell from 4th to 15th place in the Bundesliga, Bonucci conceded a penalty on his Bundesliga debut against Hoffenheim and looked like one of the worst players in the division in every single one of his 7 league appearances before being dropped. When winter arrived, missing his family and still with a faint, and perhaps somewhat delusional ambition, of making the Italy squad for Euro 2024 before hanging up his boots, Bonucci made a January move to Fenerbahce. They love a washed-up foreigner in the Turkish Super League almost as much as they do in the A-League and Major League Soccer. Fenner were in luck then because Bonucci was as washed as Justin Bieber's jeans. He got the usual rousing Istanbul welcome, but just as at Union, he was hopeless. Bonucci didn't just look like a cart horse off the ball in his time at Union and Fenner. His pass success rate, the staple of Bonucci's game, fell from over 90% at his peak to below 80%. For a centre-back playing for a team that dominates possession, certainly in the case of Fenerbahce, that is utterly abysmal. And to top it all off, after stating that he wanted to retire with a trophy-winning season, it was Bonucci himself, after being introduced as a last-minute substitute, who missed the decisive penalty in the Europa Conference League quarter-final shootout against eventual champions Olympiacos. Truly historic levels of washed right there, for which Bonucci was more than 50% to blame. 6th, Branislav Ivanovic. Like a lot of inclusions in this 7, this one was tough to watch. Branislav Ivanovic actually had a tough start to life in the Premier League, failing to register a single appearance in his first 6 months at Stamford Bridge and very nearly leaving the club. Once he established himself, however, Ivanovic became an integral part of an outstanding team. Rock solid at either centre-back or, more often, right-back, Ivanovic was one of the ever-dependable mainstays and leaders at Chelsea for almost a decade, alongside the likes of Petr Cech, John Terry, Frank Lampard and Didier Drogba. Ivanovic wasn't rapid, but he was powerful and a terrific athlete. He left Chelsea midway through the 2016-17 season, returning to Russia to join Zenit St. Petersburg. It was 3.5 years later, by which stage Ivanovic was 36 years old, that he returned to the Premier League with newly promoted West Bromwich Albion. Manager Slavan Bilic hoped that Ivanovic could bring experience and top-flight know-how to his unconvincing backline, and things actually got off to an okay-ish start. West Brom might have lost 3 and drawn 2 of his first 5 games, but Ivanovic himself came through them largely unscathed. It was after that, starting, most notably, with a 5-1 defeat at home to Crystal Palace, that Ivanovic's deficiencies, and the cruel mistress of time, became brutally apparent. Ivanovic was run ragged by players that he would have bullied in his prime, as West Brom endured a miserable campaign in which he made 15 appearances, all of them at centre-back, and the Baggies only won 5 games. In Ivanovic's own 11 starts, across all competitions, West Brom conceded 24 goals, including cup defeats against lower league Blackpool and Brentford, that 5-1 drubbing against Palace, and back-to-back 5-0 and 4-0 defeats against Leeds and Arsenal, in which Ivanovic was hooked off for his own sake as much as anything else. I'm not saying that Ivanovic was slow at West Brom, but some supporters nicknamed him Branisloth Ivanovic during his time at the Hawthorns, and his greatest contribution is widely regarded as being when he got injured against his former club Chelsea, had to be substituted, and West Brom went on to win 5-2. 5th, Michael Owen. It has got to the point now where Michael Owen, by virtue of being hated by the supporters of almost every club that he ever played for, and having all of the social skills of an incel on 4chan, is ludicrously underrated. When he broke through at Liverpool, and with England, Owen was a phenomenon. He won the Premier League Golden Boot twice before turning 20, he took the 1998 World Cup by storm at 18, and, at 21, though already past his best, genuinely, due to his first serious injury, Owen won the Ballon d'Or and the World Soccer Player of the Year award. Owen was mocked a couple of years ago for claiming that he would be worth £100 million in today's market, presumably by people who never saw him play before muscle injuries took their toll, or who have had their memories wiped Men in Black style. If anything, Owen was underselling himself. The likes of Philippe Coutinho, Joao Felix and Jack Grealish have all sold for in excess of £100 million. Owen was on a different planet to all of them, and at his absolute best, would easily be worth £150 million in today's market. Unfortunately, we're not interested in Owen at his best in this video, but Owen at his sad, impotent, and pathetic worst. Was that a bit much? Owen was plagued by muscle injuries, particularly from about 2005 onwards, following his move to Newcastle United, forcing him to radically adapt his own game. From being absolutely lightning quick undoubtedly one of the fastest footballers of my lifetime, and very complete, constantly dropping deep, running the channels in behind, stretching teams and running at players. By the age of about 26, Owen couldn't do any of that anymore, at least not without immediately pulling or tearing something, and ruling him out for another 6 months. Instead, he became a fox in the box, utilising his movement, anticipation and finishing abilities to remain fairly prolific, if you look at his minutes per goal ratio, without impacting the totality of a game. That earned him a free transfer to Manchester United, even after getting relegated in Newcastle, where Owen had a few memorable moments, but in his last season at Old Trafford, he only registered 1 Premier League appearance and 4 in all competitions. A thigh injury was the final nail in the coffin, but still aged only 32, Owen felt as though he had 1 season left in him, signing a 1-year deal at Stoke City. Owen hated Tony Pulis's intense and repetitive training sessions, and it didn't seem as though the Welshman was any fonder of him. Owen didn't start a single Premier League game all season, only playing 94 minutes in total, and not even looking like a sad imitation of the player that once won a Ballon d'Or, but something different entirely. Owen's only start at Stoke came in the FA Cup against Championship Crystal Palace, where he was brought off after 53 minutes in a 0-0 draw. In March, months before the campaign would actually draw to a close, Owen announced that he would be retiring at the end of the season. 4th, Douglas Costa. 87% of foreigners in the A-League may have earned an honourable mention, but a current one makes this actual 7. The scale and timing of Douglas Costa's demise is pretty remarkable. Touted for stardom from an early age, Costa made his name with Grêmio before following the well-trodden path of Brazilians into European football via Shakhtar Donetsk. Costa was superb at Shakhtar, breaking into the Brazilian national team and earning himself a €30 million move to Bayern Munich in 2015, amidst fierce competition for his signature. It made Costa the 4th most expensive Bayern signing of all time, but in his debut campaign, he lived up to the hype, scoring 7 goals and making a whopping 18 assists in 43 appearances as Bayern won a domestic double. Between Costa and Kingsley Coman, it looked as though Bayern had their long-term Robben and Ribéry replacements lined up. 8 years on though, while Coman is still at Bayern, about to play his 300th game for the club despite repeated injury setbacks, Costa recently joined Sydney FC in the A-League following failed stints in both the United States and Brazil. So what went wrong? In a word, everything. Costa has had injuries, controversies, he's been accused of having a poor work rate and attitude, he has been blighted by inconsistencies, and at the end of it all, his body appears to have given up on him. Costa, like Owen, was once lightning quick, so a regression in his 30s wouldn't have been surprising, but Costa's career began to crumble from about 2016 onwards, when he was only in his mid-20s. In 4 years contracted to Juventus, who signed Costa from Bayern in 2018, he only made 73 league appearances, enduring failed moves back to 2 of his old clubs, Bayern and Grêmio, followed by LA Galaxy. Costa ended up joining LA Galaxy on a permanent basis, still aged only 31 might I add, becoming the 5th highest paid player in Major League Soccer, on a contract worth almost $6 million a year. I'm not saying that he was poor value for money, but Costa scored just 8 goals and made 8 assists in over 50 appearances over 2 seasons in California, where he grew to be widely despised among many supporters. But hey, things can always get worse. Last season, back in Brazil with Fluminense, Costa was truly abysmal. In 22 appearances, including in Rio State Championship, Costa scored 0 goals and made just 1 assist, looking, at times, like a fan who'd won a competition to play with the first team. Naturally then, when no one else would, the A-League came calling. Within minutes of signing for Sydney FC, Costa announced that he had created an OnlyFans account, which probably bodes well. I'm not an expert in these things, but I'd imagine that's a good sign from your marquee new signing. If he's anything other than an unmitigated disaster, I will issue a full and frank apology and subscribe as a top-tier member of his OnlyFans. Not really, but I will apologise. 3rd, Denilson. Sticking with Brazilian wide men just for the moment, there is a tendency for Brazilian players to burn bright, but burn out relatively young, the reasons for which I explained in a video dedicated solely to that topic. Yes, that was a plug, I'm glad you noticed, but it's quite a good video, so I make no apologies for it really. Denilson, at his best, was even more talented and accomplished than Costa. Part of the star-studded Brazil squads that reached the final of the 1998 World Cup and won the 2002 World Cup, Denilson was a super sub under Luis Felipe Scolari in 2002, introduced in 5 of Brazil's games as a wildcard against tired legs. Phenomenally gifted, Denilson had a mesmerising wizardry over the ball, even when running at speed. In 1998, Real Betis made Denilson the most expensive footballer of all time in a deal worth £21.5 million. Yes, at the time, that was a world record fee. It was a shock move, not so much because of the fee, but the buying club, given the fact that Betis had only finished 8th the previous season. Denilson wasn't terrible for Betis, but as a flair player who flourished when surrounded by other incredibly talented players, he wasn't able to win games on his own, and in only his 2nd season, Betis were relegated from La Liga, and Denilson, bizarrely, found himself playing in the Segunda Division. His move to Betis, where Denilson spent 7 years, was undoubtedly damaging to his career prospects as a whole, but it is his post-Betis career, from the age of 28 onwards, which earns Denilson a spot in this 7. From 2005 to 2010, Denilson played for 7 different clubs in 6 different countries and 4 different continents in the space of just 5 years, and he was abysmal for every single one of them. Never has a once great footballer stunk the place out with such geographic diversity over such a short period of time before. Throughout that entire time, aged 27 or 28 to 32, it is worth reiterating, he was hardly touching 40 here, Denilson only scored 11 goals and made just 7 assists. It is remarkable, really, that he didn't somehow end up in the A-League at some stage. Second, Rio Ferdinand. Rio Ferdinand is a weird bloke. A bit like Michael Owen. In fact, come to think of it, maybe the reason England's golden generation didn't win anything had nothing to do with tactics, midfield balance, or the lack of a natural left footer. It's just because they were such an odd bunch of wrong-uns. Regardless, as with Owen, Ferdinand was undeniably world class. Arguably the greatest centre-back of the Premier League era, and for about a decade among the very best in the world, Ferdinand twice set British record transfer fees and world record fees for defenders by the age of 23. In Ferdinand's last season at Manchester United, however, which was the first of the post-Fergie era under David Moyes and, briefly, Ryan Giggs, there were clear signs of regression. At the end of the season, Manchester United didn't offer Ferdinand a new contract. In a statement written on his own website, age 35, Ferdinand wrote, quote, "I am feeling fit and healthy, ready for a new challenge, and looking forward to whatever the future holds for me." End quote. What the future held, it transpired, was a catastrophic season at Queen's Park Rangers. A car crash football club at the time, this 7 could easily just have been filled by QPR players from 2011 to 2015, whether that be Jose Bossingwa, Park Ji-sung, Christopher Samba, Pascal Chimbonda, Benoit Asuakoto, Julio Cesar, Andy Johnson, and, would you look at that? That's 7. There is a reason why this image of Rio Ferdinand is synonymous with the words washed up in football though, and that is because watching one of England's greatest ever centre-backs waddle around Loftus Road while QPR got beat up every week was a bit like watching a former world champion boxer make a comeback in their 40s, only to get smashed to pieces by a nobody. Incidentally, after leaving QPR, Ferdinand did actually try to become a professional boxer. He must have a fetish for that sort of thing. To be clear, there will be no kink shaming on this channel. Where was I? Oh yeah, Ferdinand described his move to QPR as being a fairy tale and cited his relationship with Harry Redknapp, who was his first manager at West Ham, as the key factor in his decision. And definitely not the fact that QPR were offering washed-up has-beens about twice as much money as anyone else at that time. Ferdinand looked more wooden than the inside of Bilbo Baggins' hobbit hole at Loftus Road, moving about the pitch with all of the freedom, grace, decorum, and dexterity of an arthritic corpse being operated on strings by a puppet master, and not a very good one. Ferdinand made 12 appearances, playing a little over 1,000 minutes of football across all competitions, during which time he was only involved in 2 victories and 2 clean sheets. Elsewhere, there was a 4-0 defeat against his old club, Manchester United, a 4-0 defeat against Tottenham, and it would be remiss of me not to mention, Ferdinand was on the wrong end of a Hull City double. But hey, there's no shame in that, Rio. QPR were relegated in dead last, and Ferdinand retired at least 12 months too late. First, Freddie Ljungberg. Freddie Ljungberg was a great footballer, with a heavy emphasis on the word was there as far as West Ham United fans were concerned when he arrived at Upton Park. Signed by Arsenal from Swedish club Halmstad as a diminutive 21-year-old, there were initially doubts about whether Ljungberg could be able to handle the physicality of the Premier League. Following a difficult debut campaign adjusting to life in North London though, Ljungberg proceeded to make a mockery of his doubters. Phenomenal for the next 6 years, Ljungberg actually won the 2001-02 Premier League Player of the Year award, in which Arsenal won the title, ahead of the likes of Michael Owen, Ruud van Nistelrooy, and his teammate Thierry Henry. In the 2005-06 season, however, a series of off-field issues led to Ljungberg's form collapsing. Persistent ankle and hip injuries, combined with chronic migraines, led to concerns at one stage that Ljungberg might have cancer. Thankfully, that wasn't the case, and it transpired that blood poisoning caused by his large tattoos was the cause of a lot of his problems. By the summer of 2007, it was clear to anyone who had paid any attention whatsoever that Ljungberg was finished at the highest level, but that didn't stop West Ham in their eternal wisdom from signing him and actually making him their captain on his debut. Come to think of it, like QPR, West Ham are real masters of the washed-up market. Ljungberg, Evra, Zabaleta by the end, Kieran Dyer, Joe Cole on his return, Alex Song. I could go on, but I won't. Ljungberg's injury problems persisted, and he looked totally disinterested in his 28 appearances, even if he had been physically capable of competing. Ljungberg was so bad that just 1 year into his deal, West Ham paid him £6 million to rip up his contract and leave. Incredibly, it would be another 6 years before Ljungberg actually retired from professional football. Moves to Seattle Sounders, Chicago Fire, Celtic, Shimizu S-Pulse, and Mumbai City followed, with Ljungberg looking more and more finished and less interested with every one of them, as memories of that bright pink and red mohawk and those dazzling performances gradually faded, but he still somehow convinced a handful of clueless chief executives to offer him fresh contracts. All was not in vain though, because Ljungberg's latter years now earn him the proud distinction of being officially recognised by me as the most washed up a footballer has ever looked. I hope he hangs it next to his Premier League Player of the Year award. That is it for today's video. Thank you all very much, as ever, for watching. Hit the like button if you enjoyed it, let me know your thoughts down below in the comments, and of course, as ever, make sure you're subscribed, and have notifications turned on not just for this channel, HITC Sevens, but, you know, why stop there? There is also my second channel. I know, sounds good, doesn't it? Alfie Potshammer, both of which should be about to appear on your screens now, along with a couple of videos that you might fancy watching after this one. You can also find me on Twitter, Instagram, or Threads via the username @HITC Sevens on all three, should you wish to do so. And all of those links plus a whole lot more should be down in the video description below. Cheers.